I wired $35,000 that morning for my sister's dream wedding. Mine had been a sandwich at City Hall. I remember staring at the confirmation screen a few seconds longer than necessary, as if the zeros might change themselves. But no, the money was gone. Like every other time before, tuition, medical bills, bailouts thinly disguised as loans. This transfer vanished without a thank you, without even acknowledgement. Just the expectation that I'd do it, because I always did. The apartment was quiet, except for the soft buzz of Monica's text tone. I ignored it for now. I had to meet them for lunch. Ashley insisted. She said it'd be fun. It was never fun. The country club looked the same as always, polished, curated, and just uncomfortable enough to remind me that I didn't really belong. I caught sight of my reflection in the glass door, blazer slightly rumpled, hair tied back in a low bun. Efficient. Not elegant. Rachel, my mother called, her voice lifting just enough to sound gracious in front of the hostess, but not quite enough to feel warm. I kissed her cheek. She smelled of expensive floral perfume and judgment. Ashley stood as I approached, sunglasses perched atop her head like a crown. She wore a pale pink dress that looked like it cost what I'd just wired. Maybe more. Nice of you to join us, she said, air kissing my cheek. I was right on time, I replied, sliding into the chair across from her. Technically, she smirked, then turned to the waiter. Hi, I'll have the lobster bisque and the Sauvignon Blanc. And my sister'll have… What are you having? Something safe? Club sandwich, I said, not bothering to open the menu. Water. Ashley rolled her eyes. Always so sensible. Our mother smiled thinly. We were just discussing the honeymoon options. Ashley found this package to Bali, but it's a bit basic. Ashley leaned forward dramatically. It includes a sunset sail and a massage, but honestly, the hotel only has 3 stars on TripAdvisor. I mean, for a honeymoon? I said nothing. 3 stars sounded like paradise. And you'll make it work, won't you, honey? My mother added, reaching across to pat my hand like I was 5. You always do. I smiled, nodded, bit the inside of my cheek. And try to dress a little more festive for the engagement party, she continued, her voice light but pointed. You know, a little color. It's a celebration. I forced a laugh. Sure, I'll dig through my spreadsheet wardrobe. Ashley snorted. God, you're so… you. I focused on the water glass in front of me. The condensation beating down its sides looked like escape. When our food came, Ashley barely touched hers, too busy narrating her wedding plans. So the planner says we can do sparklers at the end, which will be so cute for the photos. I've already booked the string quartet, but I might fire them if they don't learn Taylor Swift's Lover. It's our first dance. Did Ethan request that? I asked mildly. No, but I just know he'll love it. She waved a manicured hand. Men don't really get the details. The waiter approached again with a wide smile and a fluted glass. Compliments of Mr. Ethan, he said, setting it in front of Ashley. He asked us to treat you. Ashley lit up. Aw, babe, he's so thoughtful. I kept my face neutral. Ethan had never once offered to split a single cost of this wedding. She lifted the glass and turned to me. Try not to look too single at the party, okay? The words slid across the table like broken glass. I met her gaze, smiled tightly. Then my phone buzzed again. I glanced down. Missed call. Monica. Preview. Found something you should see. I stared at the screen, heart ticking faster now. Something twisted beneath my ribs. Hope or dread, I couldn't yet tell. When I was little, my parents told me love had no conditions, but they certainly attached plenty to mine. It was almost 8:15 a.m. when I logged into the financial dashboard, coffee half warm and untouched. Notifications pinged like a slot machine. Overdue reports, payment reminders, vendor queries. Somewhere in that flashing chaos was a text from Ashley. Can you also upgrade the champagne? The current one's a little sad. I stared at the message. Not please. Not thank you. Just do this. The usual. My thumb hovered over the keyboard before I finally replied. I'll handle it. Again. I minimized the wedding spreadsheet and clicked into a budget forecast for a city redevelopment initiative. Numbers calmed me, their logic immune to emotional undercurrents. Still, my brain flicked to Jill, our cousin. Years ago, she'd cried on my couch about not affording her last semester. I'd cut her a check within days. Last month, at Ashley's bridal fitting, she'd barely met my eyes. When Ashley bragged about the honeymoon villa, Jill had nodded enthusiastically, as if she'd forgotten I existed. Love, unconditional? Hardly. By noon, I was drowning in department memos and revision requests. My inbox pinged again, this time from Monica. Dinner tonight? My treat. You need carbs and a friend. I replied instantly, desperately. Sil? Same place? The relief came before I even stood up from my chair. At La Taverna, the clink of wine glasses and low murmur of conversation softened the edge off my day. Monica slid into the booth across from me, already waving down the server. You look like a collapsed spreadsheet, she said. Flattering. Accurate. The waiter brought water and she leaned in. So tell me, why do you always foot the bill for their lives? I picked up my glass. Because no one else does. She blinked. That's not a real answer. It's the only one that works. Monica sighed and unwrapped her napkin. You ever think about boundaries? Like, actual ones? I tried once, I said. Didn't go over well. She paused. You know Robbins? The estate guy? From your aunt's nightmare probate? Yeah, he was good. Quiet, sharp. Dug into things no one wanted him to. If your family's playing fast and loose with any old money, he'd sniff it out. I smiled. You think I have secret millions waiting in the shadows? Number, but maybe you had something and didn't know it. Just then, my phone buzzed again. Another text from Ashley. Also, can we change the chairs to gold ones? The silver clashes with Ethan's tie. I exhaled hard through my nose. Monica saw the look and flagged down the waiter. Bring her something strong and bread. The food came. Pasta for her, salmon for me, and for a moment we didn't talk. It was the first time all day I felt still. Back at my apartment later that night, a small padded envelope waited by the door. Inside was a thank you gift from the venue. Truffle oils, a corkscrew, and a handwritten card. Thank you for your generosity, Ms. Wilson. We're honored to be hosting this joyous event. Nothing from Ashley, nothing from my parents. But at least the venue staff appreciated me. I dropped the envelope on the counter, feeling the weight settle in my chest. My eyes drifted to the corner of the bookshelf, where the wooden box from Grandma Helen still sat, untouched since the funeral. Something compelled me to open it. Inside, the usual knickknacks. A string of pearls, faded Polaroids, a pressed lily, and a folded piece of paper taped to a yellowing check. I unfolded it. For you. Just you. The check was made out to me, dated 7 years ago. $5,000. I had never seen it before. Never cashed it. But she had written that line, in her exact, unhurried script. Just you. I stood frozen, the paper crinkling softly in my grip. Had she known? Had she seen what no one else did? A new ping broke the silence. Email. Subject. Estate questions. From Robbins, Gregory. Happy to help. Let's talk inheritance clauses, quietly. There's a special kind of silence that follows humiliation. It rings louder than applause. The garden was stunning, of course. Crystal lanterns flickered in the late June dusk, casting soft light across glassware and linen-draped tables. Someone had arranged peonies in pale peach and cream at every turn, their fragrance floating through the warm air like a dare. Try to find something wrong here. The guests, dozens of them, glowed in designer fabrics and laughter. Everyone seemed to know someone. I stood near the mimosa bar, smiling when appropriate, clutching my flute of sparkling rosé. A few people stopped to say things like, "You're Ashley's sister, right? She said you helped so much," as if I were a particularly efficient assistant. "Wow," one woman cooed, eyeing the setup. "Did she say this was all handled by you? That's just incredible." I smiled. She has a great vision. That was the dance. I give, she gleams. Ashley moved from group to group, radiant in white. A chiffon off-shoulder gown with pearl beading hugged her figure, her hair in sleek waves. Ethan was never far from her elbow, laughing in that polite, empty way men do when they're present but disengaged. Monica found me near the perimeter of the crowd, sipping a drink that had probably cost more than my groceries for the month. "You okay?" she asked, eyes scanning my face. "I'm great," I lied. "Did she ever thank you? Like actually say thank you?" "Number." "But the planner did. Twice." Monica tilted her head. "You know there's a name for what they're doing to you." "Let me guess. Charity?" She didn't smile. "Number emotional embezzlement." I let out a laugh, more breath than sound. "That sounds about right." Music faded slightly as someone tapped a glass with a fork. I turned. Ashley stood on the main terrace platform, Ethan beside her, arm looped around her waist. Their father, lifted his voice. "Everyone, may I have your attention?" The crowd quieted with practiced ease. Phones lifted. Ashley held her champagne aloft, grinning like a pageant queen. "Hi, everyone. I just want to say thank you all for coming tonight. We feel so incredibly blessed and surrounded by love." The group murmured approval. She glanced at Ethan, who nodded. Her voice dropped into a rehearsed sincerity. "Weddings are about celebration, but also about partnership. And I've been lucky to have so many examples of love, perseverance, and family around me." People nodded, some clapped. She raised her glass higher. "To my family, especially the ones who succeed, and the ones who keep trying." A beat passed. Then, laughter. It wasn't mean-spirited, not overtly. It was the chuckle of people who didn't want to make things awkward. The kind of laugh people give when they're not sure if they're supposed to. But I knew. So did they. Eyes darted toward me, then away. Even Jill, who stood just 2 feet from me, failed to meet my gaze. Her smile faltered and she took a sip of wine. My spine stiffened. Heat crawled up my neck. My hands shook slightly, the champagne fluting rippling. Monica's hand slid under the table, gripping mine firmly. I didn't look at her. I couldn't. Ashley clinked her glass to Ethan's and took a triumphant sip, still beaming. I stood slowly. People barely noticed. The party flowed on, a current I stepped out of. The hallway to the guest restrooms was quiet, carpeted, absurdly well-scented. I walked past gilded frames and photos of smiling couples on horseback, polo tournaments from another era. Inside the restroom, I faced the mirror. My lipstick had faded. My eyes looked tired, hollowed. I set my clutch down, pressed my palms against the marble sink. "That's the last thing I ever paid for," I whispered. The words echoed in the silence. Flat, firm, final. Some debts are paid with silence. Mine came with a bow and a receipt. The sound of packing tape ripping across cardboard was oddly satisfying. I peeled old photographs from the wall one by one, slipping each into a manila folder. Most were taken before things had names. Before I realized that support without thanks was a form of quiet exploitation. Birthday parties where I was behind the camera, graduations where my name wasn't mentioned. Christmas mornings with Ashley holding gifts I'd paid for but never signed. I had thought memories would comfort me. Instead, they mocked me. I reached the living room shelf and ran my fingers along the edge of the frame with Grandma Helen's photo. She wore that same pearl necklace she always told me would be mine. I had never found it. Her box still sat on my desk, opened the night Robbins emailed. I picked up the check again. "For you, just you." a phrase that had burrowed its way into my chest like a flare waiting to ignite. I opened my laptop and navigated to the bank dashboard. Line by line, I began canceling every standing authorization. The auto payment for Ashley's wedding planner, the honeymoon suite deposit, even the monthly transfer that had been going to my parents for the house upkeep. They had their golden child now. Let her shine with her own checkbook. By the time I finished, it was noon. I changed into a blazer and slacks, sharp, navy, functional, and headed downtown. Robin's office was tucked inside one of those discreet high-rise lobbies with frosted glass elevators and marble too clean to feel real. The receptionist offered me water and a clipboard, but Robin's appeared within minutes, warm handshake ready, dressed in neutral tones that said, "Trust me," better than any marketing brochure. "Rachel Wilson," he said, guiding me inside. "Nice to meet in person. You've had quite the few weeks." That's one way to describe them. His office was lined with books and quiet confidence. I sat across from him and opened my folder. My grandmother passed last year. She left some assets. Not massive, but meaningful. And they disappeared quickly, within months. I didn't ask questions then. I should have. He nodded, folding his hands. "Do you have reason to believe you were left something directly?" I slid the check across the desk. She didn't use digital banking. If there was a will, something formal, it got buried. But this was hers, and it was meant for me. He studied the check, then the handwriting on the note. "It's enough to open a trace. If your name was used to move any assets, especially under shared account authority, we can find it. Misuse of power of attorney, inheritance fraud. It all leaves fingerprints." I exhaled slowly. I want to know how much of my life was borrowed under the assumption I wouldn't question it. His eyes held steady. "Then let's start questioning." Back at home, I pulled a box from the hallway closet. It was narrow and ivory-colored, tied with a pale ribbon. Inside was a monogrammed planner, Ashley's initials in gold. It had taken weeks to custom order. Pages thick enough to feel luxurious, dated for the year ahead. I turned to the first week in July, flipped through August, September. Blank. Every square pristine. Untouched. I slipped in a card. "To help you plan your future. I'm no longer financing it." The bow slid back into place effortlessly. That evening, Monica swung by with takeout and iced wine. She saw the cleared shelves and the taped boxes and said nothing for a full minute. Finally, she asked, "So what now?" I looked at her. Calm. Steady. Now I watch, and I wait. A chime interrupted us. I picked up my phone. Email notification. Joint account withdrawal approved. $12,000. The account was supposed to be dormant. My name was still on it. But not for long. Sometimes the smallest file can bring down the largest facade. The printout on Robin's desk looked unassuming. Just a few pages stapled neatly, black ink on white paper. But I couldn't stop staring at the signature line, because it had my name on it. Except, I'd never signed that form. Robbins watched me carefully. "The transfer happened 6 months after your grandmother passed," he said. "It was a direct release of funds from her trust account. Roughly $82,000, I blinked. I never saw a dollar of that." He nodded. "Because it went to a joint account between Ashley and your father. This document authorized the release. It requires your signature as the named beneficiary." I leaned in, heart thudding. "I never signed this. I never saw it." "I believe you." He slid over a second page. "Here's the kicker. The IP address from the digital signature platform traces back to your father's home internet, not your laptop, not your email. It's a textbook case of forgery. Civil, not criminal yet, but provable." I traced the edge of the paper with my finger. The signature looked like mine. Neat, slanted slightly to the right, but there was something off. Too smooth. Too perfect. A practiced mimicry. Ashley had always been good at copying things. Even me. I need you to walk me through the week after Helen passed, Robin said gently. Anything you remember. I exhaled and closed my eyes. It had been a warm October afternoon. The reading took place in a paneled office that smelled like lemon wood polish and paper. Ashley had been late, arriving in a fitted black dress and oversized sunglasses. Our father sat beside her, silent but watchful. The lawyer had opened a manila folder and said, "Per Helen's written instructions, Rachel Wilson is the primary beneficiary of her personal trust. She also requested that this not be managed jointly by family executors. Her wording was clear, without interference." I remember Ashley turning toward me with a too bright smile. "Grandma always loved you best." Later that day, she pulled me aside. "I'll handle the filings," she said. "You're swamped with work and everything. Just sign the base form and I'll coordinate with the lawyer." I'd refused. Told her I'd manage it myself. But I never followed through. I was grieving, distracted, and the check Grandma had left, for you, just you, had felt like enough. I didn't think to question whether there was more. Now I knew better. I opened my eyes. "I didn't authorize anything," I said quietly. Robbins nodded. "That's what makes this actionable." He slid a folder toward me. "This is the complete digital chain of custody, time-stamped. It shows who accessed the file, when, and from which device. We can subpoena ISP records to support it further if needed." I flipped through the pages. The lies were laid out in data points, a timeline of betrayal dressed as logistics. Robbins handed me another sheet. "Here's the civil complaint draft. I haven't filed it yet, but once we do, they'll be notified immediately." I hesitated. "If we go forward, what happens to them?" He was quiet for a beat. "They'll scramble, possibly try to settle quietly, but if you choose to go public, court filings become part of public record. So does the story." I stared at the forged signature again. 8 letters. My name, my trust, stolen in my own handwriting. Robbins leaned forward. "Are you ready to go quiet or go public?" I didn't answer right away, but I knew which way I was leaning. I could forgive a thief, but not a sister who watched me burn and handed over the matches. The document slid across the desk like a final insult, and for a moment all I could do was stare at the name in neat print beside the word witness. Jill Andrews. My cousin. The one I once drove 6 hours to pick up from campus after she failed a midterm and didn't want her parents to know. The one I helped cover tuition gaps with quiet transfers and a smile that said, "Don't worry, I've got you." Robbins tapped his pen against the page. We ran the witness log on the transfer papers. Jill signed off. Twice. First on the digital verification, then again in a physical filing. I didn't respond. "I'm guessing this wasn't with your knowledge." I shook my head. She once cried in my apartment because her scholarship didn't renew. I bought her groceries for a semester. Robbins leaned back. "It's often the ones closest to you. They think proximity grants them permission." My phone buzzed against the tabletop. A message from Monica lit up the screen. "Jill is showing off a Lexus on Facebook. Caption, new ride, new me." I almost laughed, but the sound died in my throat. "She used to ride the bus to work," I muttered. "I doubt she's paying for that car alone," Robbins said. "Your family set up a redistribution system. We've traced nearly $48,000 of estate money into unrelated accounts. Small deposits over time. Aunts, cousins, even a transfer labeled Kitchen Reno that ends up in your uncle's home fund." I blinked. "They split it up." "Like war spoils," he replied. "Ashley and your father handled the front lines. The others signed off and benefited. No questions, no paper trail strong enough to hold. Until now." I sat still for a long minute. The map he printed fanned out before me. Arrows and labels and timelines, all in cold, undeniable ink. My name connected to every flow, the center of the web. I thought of Jill's shaky voice years ago, the way she'd hugged me too tightly. "I'll pay you back someday," she'd said. Turns out she did. In betrayal. At home, I dumped out a drawer of old notebooks and receipts. My fingers sifted through lists, birthday budgets, flower invoices, care package notes I'd written for relatives in the hospital. The cost of love, line by line. It had never been about money. Until it was. Until the people I protected used it as permission to gut me clean. My phone buzzed again. Monica this time. You okay? I didn't answer. Not yet. I drew a large circle in the center of a page and wrote my name inside it. From there, I began connecting lines. Ashley. Wedding, honeymoon, planner, spa retreat. Dad. Joint account. Mom. Furniture loans. Jill. Tuition. Car? Uncle Mark. Bathroom remodel. None of them had called to thank me, but all of them had cashed in. Back at Robin's office the next morning, he handed me a new file, this one labeled Estate Analysis, Phase 2. They funneled your trust into their lifestyles, he said. No matter how they spin it, the intent shows through. I traced my fingers over the printout again, this time slower. The math didn't lie. But what hurt more was the story it told. They had seen me as an account, not a person. This isn't about the money anymore, I whispered. Robbins nodded. It's about dignity. I didn't need to scream. A well-placed whisper could do far more damage. The cursor blinked at me from the edge of the screen. I hovered my finger above the enter key, rereading the contents of the email for the third time. Nothing in it was exaggerated. Nothing was invented. It was cold, precise, with attachments that spelled out betrayal in signatures and bank routing numbers. Subject: inheritance misappropriation, internal awareness. Only the recipient was Ethan's company, a mid-size investment firm where he served as a junior partner. I didn't address it to him directly. I didn't have to. One look at the forged transfer documents and the attached asset map, and anyone in compliance would know what they were looking at. Breach of trust, inheritance fraud, and names tied to the fallout. Ashley's name was all over the paperwork. So was mine. Except I was the one being stolen from. The email was sent from a fresh burner account. I'd spent an hour creating it, toggling VPNs, bouncing off relays like Robbins instructed. No breadcrumbs, no traceable headers. The second email was shorter, but it weighed more. Subject: charitable accountability. Questions about Mr. Wilson's joint account activity. It went to the board of directors at the nonprofit where my father had volunteered for over a decade. They prided themselves on financial transparency and frequently posted quarterly reports. The irony wasn't lost on me. I hit send. Then I closed the laptop slowly, like I had just slid a file across a courtroom table. The morning light spilled through the windows of my apartment. It was the same view I had every day. But today, it looked different. Sharper. Like I'd opened something I couldn't close. My phone vibrated. Monica. Coffee today? Or should I bring whiskey? I texted back. Both. An hour later, we sat in a corner booth at her cafe. The windows steamed with the warmth of freshly baked scones and sun through glass. Monica handed me a cup with my usual scrawled on the sleeve. Black with a shot of vengeance. You look calm, she said, raising an eyebrow. I sipped. I'm not. She leaned in. Tell me you didn't go nuclear. No, I said. Just tactical. She blinked. That almost scares me more. I tapped my phone and opened the draft folder. Evidence went out this morning. Ethan's firm. Dad's charity. Her face went still. Rachel? I waited. When you flip the switch, she said softly, there's no going back. I know. No takebacks. No just kidding. This is the kind of truth that scorches. I'm counting on that. She studied me for a second. Good. Just remember, fire spreads. Later that evening, I sat on the couch in my apartment, knees tucked under me, TV humming without volume. Robbins called just past 7. They'll know someone's watching, he said simply. I could hear papers shifting on his desk, the quiet tension of someone who knew exactly how this could unfold. That's the point, I replied. Just be careful. They may not go down quietly. I'm not expecting quiet. We hung up. I opened my laptop again, this time just to stare at the inbox. The screen blinked once. New message. From Ethan. Subject. We need to talk. My hands tightened around the mug still warm beside me. Whispers, I thought. They travel faster than screams. They wanted a family meeting. What they got was a court. I arrived 10 minutes late. On purpose. The driveway was already packed, familiar cars huddled close together like old secrets. Monica stayed parked down the street, engine running, just in case. The front door creaked open before I even knocked. Mom stood there in pearls and pastel, the kind of outfit that said, "This is fine, nothing's wrong," even when everything was. "We've been waiting," she said. I stepped past her into the dining room where the smell of lemon polish and aged furniture wrapped around me like a chokehold. The long mahogany table was set, not for dinner, but for interrogation. Ashley sat on one end, arms folded, face flushed. Dad at the opposite, trying to look neutral but failing. Jill beside Mom, eyes darting. No one offered me a seat. So I pulled one out for myself. Ashley was first. "You've been erratic lately." "Withdrawn," Dad added. "You've sent strange emails," Mom said, "to people who don't appreciate being involved." "You mean Ethan?" I asked, voice level. He appreciated it. Ashley shifted in her chair. "You know what I mean." "I do," I replied. I pulled out the folder I'd kept in my bag, the one Robbins printed on cream-colored paper because he knew presentation mattered. I laid one copy in front of each of them. "What's this?" Mom asked. "Documentation," I said. "Signed inheritance transfers, forged signatures, financial flows, a map of where Grandma's money went." Ashley scoffed. "This is ridiculous." Dad flipped through the pages. He paused. "Where did you get these?" "Robbins," I said. "A lawyer. A good one." "This isn't what we came here for," Mom tried. "Oh, but it is." I leaned forward, voice quiet but firm. "You wanted to talk about my behavior. You wanted me to explain. So here it is. I found out what you did. I found out who helped. And I stopped paying for the privilege of being ignored." Ashley banged the table, flat palms slapping against wood. "You think this changes anything?" I looked her dead in the eye. "I didn't turn against you. I finally turned toward myself." For a second, silence fell. A thick, leaden pause. Then Ashley stood, fists clenched. "This changes nothing." I picked up my bag, calm as glass. "We'll see." And with that, I walked out, each step a drumbeat. Out the door, down the porch, back into Monica's car. She didn't say anything, just drove. But I could feel it. A shift. The moment before the storm turns and blows back toward the ones who started it. Even empires of manipulation collapse when built on forged signatures. The message came at 6:14 a.m., a vibration on the nightstand, no ringtone. Just Ethan's name and a preview. "I'm out." She lied. About everything. I sat up slowly, the fog of sleep quickly swept away by a jolt of vindication, and something colder beneath it. The kind of chill that sets in when you realize someone else finally saw what you've been screaming about in silence. The full message was short, blunt, almost apologetic. It was never about money, but she lied about that too. And the estate. "I can't do this anymore. Thank you for the documents. I wish I'd listened sooner." I forwarded the screenshot to Robbins. No subject line. He didn't need one. Within an hour, the story began to ripple. Monica texted first. "You're trending in whispers." Quietly, but it's happening. Then came the news alert. Local outlet. Small column at the bottom of the feed. But enough. Longtime board member under investigation for improper disbursement of charity funds. Dad's name wasn't printed yet, but the charity was. And the aid fund? The one Jill got help from? It had Rachel Campbell listed as a co-signer on the release documents. I stared at the screen, at my name used again, again, like it belonged to them. My phone rang. Robbins. They checked the charity files. There's a freeze on all outgoing funds. Your father's been asked to step down until the audit clears. And Ashley? I asked. She'll be next, publicly or privately, but it's coming. I nodded, then said the words I hadn't let myself say until now. No more mercy. He didn't argue. The next move was mine. I opened the template Robbins had drafted for me. A legal cease and desist. It was simple, surgical, effective immediately. No party may use my name, signature, or prior authorizations in any capacity. All previously shared access is hereby revoked. I signed it with the same name they'd dragged across forms and accounts like a doormat. And then I sent it. 10 minutes later, my phone started buzzing. Ashley, over and over. I didn't answer. A voicemail. Then another. I let them pile up like snowdrifts. The final message came as a text. Please, we need to talk. It's about Mom. I stared at it. But I didn't reply. I used to send money. Now I send silence. There was something oddly sacred about writing it by hand. A blue ballpoint pen on thick ivory paper. The kind my mother used to hoard for holiday cards. The kind I used to buy in bulk and never sign. But this wasn't a card. This was my goodbye. The letter was addressed to the family's attorney, the same man who'd once shaken my hand and told me, "Your grandmother would be proud of you." He'd smiled as he filed the inheritance papers I never saw again. I wondered now if he'd known, how much he'd looked the other way. But I wasn't here to make accusations, just declarations. I wrote clearly, deliberately. Effective immediately, I revoke all financial representation rights granted to my family or any entity acting on their behalf. Any previous authorizations, verbal or written, are invalid. Please acknowledge receipt in writing. No lawsuit. No threat. Just a boundary carved in ink and truth. Monica waited in the hallway, coat in one hand, car keys in the other. "You sure you're ready?" she asked. I nodded, folded the letter, sealed it in an envelope, and slid it into my purse. We left the city that afternoon. Drove past highways I hadn't seen since college, through green hills beginning to turn gold at the edges. It was late June, the sun casting shadows that made everything look like it was about to start again. Her cabin sat by a lake, silent and still, framed by pine trees and wild lavender. I stepped out of the car and inhaled. No traffic, no emails, no voices, just birds, just wind, just space. Inside, Monica handed me a blanket and a cinnamon roll. "I've been saving this batch." "You know," I said, curling up on the couch, "I don't think I've ever let a day go by without checking my balance sheet." She laughed. "Then we start now." I powered down my phone, not just silent mode. Office Robbins called the landline 2 days later. Monica answered and handed me the receiver. "They're being audited," he said, with a calm I could almost taste. Quietly, thoroughly. The charity, the wedding planner, even the estate transfers. "And my name?" I asked. "Clean, but they know now they'll never use it again." I stared at the lake for a moment. "Thank you." "No need," he said. "Just breathe." I did. Later that night, I baked. The rhythm of kneading dough, dusting flour. It anchored me. My phone sat on the countertop, still off, still untouched. And that's when I recorded the final piece. A simple voice message. Short, steady. "This number is no longer available to anyone." No name, no exceptions. I uploaded it, replaced the old voicemail, and tucked the phone back into a drawer. The next morning, sunlight slid across the floor. Monica was in the kitchen, stirring coffee, humming something off-key. She glanced at me and smiled. "So, what now?" I looked out at the water, steaming mug in hand. "Now," I said, "I live." The same people who mocked my silence now fear my presence. The receptionist at the law office barely looked up when we arrived, but I could feel her curiosity pressing like humidity in the air. Robbins and I didn't speak in the elevator. We didn't need to. The documents in his leather folio said everything. When the elevator doors opened onto the 15th floor, a hush greeted us. Not silence, but tension. Thick, manufactured politeness, like the kind my mother used to keep on hand for funerals and forced holiday photos. The conference room was glass-walled and cold, sterile in its symmetry. On one side, my parents, seated stiffly. Ashley next to them, dressed in soft lavender, the same shade she wore to Grandma Helen's memorial. A coincidence, or maybe a sick little joke. Across from them sat a middle-aged man in a navy suit, the Wilsons' attorney. His smile didn't reach his eyes. He stood as I entered. "Ms. Wilson, thank you for coming." I nodded. "I assume we're not here to reminisce." "No," he said, gesturing to a chair. "We're here to propose a resolution. A private, amicable one." Robbins remained standing behind me. He didn't even open his file yet. The attorney pushed a thick envelope across the table. "We understand there have been misunderstandings. Emotions ran high. The article online is creating unnecessary speculation. Our offer is simple: remove the publication, sign a non-disclosure, and in return, the full value of your share in Helen's estate, plus interest, will be wired back to you." Quietly. I didn't touch the envelope. Ashley broke in, voice polished but shaky. "Rachel, it doesn't have to be this way. No one wanted things to go this far." "No?" I asked, meeting her eyes. "Because someone signed my name on a legal transfer. Someone routed money through my trust. And someone sat beside me at a funeral knowing I'd been erased." My father cleared his throat. "We're a family. Mistakes were made, but nothing." I cut in, reaching for the folder Robbins finally laid before me. One by one, I slid copies across the table. The forged form, the altered will schedule, the fund transfer into Ashley's honeymoon account, dated a week before Helen's death was officially certified. "Let me be clear," I said. "This isn't about the money. Not anymore. This is about restoring what you tried to erase. My rights, my history, my name." Ashley's cheeks turned pink, but she said nothing. My mother looked away. Robbins leaned forward, voice calm. "And before you respond, we'd suggest reviewing some new material." He reached into his satchel and placed a small USB stick in the center of the table. In red marker across its surface, "You might want to watch this before we proceed." The room went still. I stood. "We'll wait for your decision," I said, "but I won't wait forever." No one moved as Robbins and I walked out, the glass door clicking shut behind us. They buried the truth. Grandma recorded it. The room was dim except for the glow of the monitor. Robbins sat across from me, arms folded, his face unreadable. The USB drive had been slotted in minutes ago, but we hadn't pressed play. Not yet. The weight of what might be on it hung in the air, heavier than anything we had faced so far. I finally clicked the file. A black screen appeared. No video, just audio. The room filled with static at first, then her voice. "Hello, Rachel." My breath caught. "If you're hearing this, it means someone's trying to take what's yours," Grandma Helen said, her tone crisp but warm. "And I need you to remember something very clearly. I left it all to you. Not because you asked, not because you needed it, but because you never did." My hands trembled slightly. Robbins didn't speak. Helen continued, her voice softening. "I watched everyone circle me like vultures the moment I got sick. Promises, visits, favors. But only one person checked my thermostat. Only one brought soup without a camera." I blinked hard. Monica's face filled the top corner of the screen. She'd joined via call, silent, eyes wide. "If anyone challenges this, remind them," Helen said firmly. "I know who loved me without asking for anything." A pause. "Rachel is the sole heir, No addendums, no signatures or witnesses can change that. Anyone saying otherwise is lying or desperate. There it was, the confirmation. Not in legalese, but in something stronger. Truth. Monica choked out a sob. She knew. She knew what they were like. Robbins leaned back, exhaling slowly. That settles it. Even without the paper trail, that recording confirms intent. If they try to contest now, we go nuclear. I didn't respond. Instead, I stared at the dark screen, still hearing Helen's voice echo in my bones. Use it if you must, she'd said. But I hope you never need to. I hope you found peace. I stood, pushing back the chair gently. It's over, I said, barely above a whisper. Legally and emotionally. Silence settled for a moment. Then Robbins asked, his voice low, "Are you going to tell them?" I looked at the USB still plugged in, the symbol of everything they tried to take and failed. No, I said, turning toward the window where the afternoon light cut a clean path across the carpet. I'm going to live like they don't exist. Lies don't fall quietly. They crash. The first ding came at 8:02 a.m., a push notification. Ethan Porter has posted a new statement. My thumb hovered, hesitant, as if tapping would detonate something. I clicked. The caption read, "No one wants to admit when they've been complicit. I owe someone an apology. Actually, several." The post was long, honest, trembling. Ethan detailed the engagement, the cracks he'd ignored, and the truth I'd sent him. He admitted he'd never looked too closely because comfort breeds blindness. He called out Ashley, not by name, but by action. I let someone lie in front of me. That makes me guilty too. The comments flooded in. Support, shock, disbelief, a few critics. But the tone was clear. He believed me. Publicly. An hour later, another buzz. A press release from the charity where my father served as a board advisor. The language was clean, surgical. Pending an internal review of financial activities tied to a family trust, Mr. Wilson's position is hereby suspended. I read it twice. Then again. No sentiment, just facts. Truth, printed in font size 11, black and white. Jill, the cousin who once cried over tuition and later signed false witness statements, posted a for sale listing for her car that afternoon. Monica saw it first and texted, "Guess blood money can't cover car payments." I didn't reply. I didn't need to. Ashley's wedding registry, once meticulously curated, vanished. Her in-laws had evidently discovered more than Ethan had let on. A bridal forum exploded with anonymous tips about a bride who spent family money without consent. One user claimed, "She's being asked to return gifts," and the deposit. The collapse wasn't dramatic. No fire, no fury. Just one card tipping into another. Quiet, methodical, inevitable. At dusk, I sat on my couch, lights off, phone screen dim. A message from Dad arrived. "We didn't think you'd go this far." I didn't hesitate. "That's because you never thought I'd go at all." No typing bubble followed. The night was quiet, but it carried a weightless kind of peace. The kind you don't realize you've missed until it arrives. Then came the final ripple. An email popped into my inbox. "Ms. Wilson, I represent a small production studio currently developing a docuseries on financial betrayal and legacy disputes. Your story has come to our attention. Would you be open to a conversation?" I stared at it, then leaned back into the silence. Justice hadn't just arrived. It had spread, without a single scream. For the first time in years, I bought something that wasn't for anyone else. It was a lamp. Small, stained glass. The kind with a tulip pattern I used to think was gaudy. But under the golden afternoon light in the antique shop, it felt like the kind of odd, unnecessary joy I'd denied myself for too long. I picked it up without comparing prices. No inner monologue. No mental note to save the receipt in case someone else needed something more. I brought it home to my new place. A one-bedroom apartment facing the lake with creaky wooden floors and a balcony that smelled like morning. No one knew the address. Not Monica, not Robbins, not even the courier, really. I'd picked up the keys myself. Monica was the exception. She showed up uninvited the day after I moved in, a bag of scones in one hand and a smug grin in the other. "You really weren't joking about disappearing," she said, stepping over unpacked boxes and placing a bouquet of wildflowers in the sink. "But I'm dragging you out tomorrow. Don't argue." "I'm not exactly public friendly these days," I muttered. She raised an eyebrow. "You're not a fugitive, just a woman who needs better lighting and possibly a new beginning." The next day, she took me to a city planning exhibition, the kind of thing I would have skipped before. Too many khakis and pamphlets. But the smell of roasted nuts from the street vendors lured me, and her insistence wore me down. That's where I saw him again. Mark stood at the podium in a navy sweater and dark jeans, speaking about lakefront revitalization with a kind of earnestness that couldn't be faked. The last time I'd seen him, I was hunched over a laptop at a charity gala, managing logistics Ashley should have handled. He had asked then if I was okay. I'd said I was busy. Now our eyes met across a gallery space filled with architectural models. He blinked, then smiled slowly, like someone recognizing a song they hadn't heard in years. "Rachel Wilson," he said, stepping closer. "Or do you go by something new now?" "Rachel," I replied, "but no longer on call." He laughed. "I always liked your timing." We sat down at a coffee cart tucked between the exhibits, two mismatched chairs and the smell of cinnamon in the air. "Your family," he began, hesitating. "Collapsed like an expired souffle," I said. "But I'm fine. Better, actually." He nodded. "You look lighter." I didn't know what to say to that, so I sipped my coffee. We talked about zoning laws and favorite desserts, about family and the fragile art of starting over. He didn't ask for a full retelling. I didn't offer one. It felt good to let the past stay unspoken, like keeping an old scar under fabric. As we stood to leave, he asked quietly, "Are you open to starting over?" I tilted my head. "Only if it starts with dessert first." That night, I returned home to my quiet haven. The wind hummed through the trees, and I stood on my balcony, the lake reflecting a ribbon of moonlight. I pulled out my phone, typed one last message to Robbins. "Tell them, I won't be returning calls, or regrets." And then I turned off the phone again, not out of anger, but choice. The lamp on my nightstand glowed soft tulips across the wall as I drifted off to sleep. Not for anyone else. Just me. I gave them everything. And in the end, I kept the one thing they couldn't take: my name. The lake was calm that morning, just the occasional ripple, like the water was learning to breathe again. I sat with my laptop near the open window, the smell of wet pine drifting in. My coffee had gone cold, but I didn't care. The cursor blinked at the bottom of the final paragraph. I read the line again. I was called a failure. But I built a life they could never ruin. There was something both terrifying and freeing about letting it out. The story I had held in my bones for so long was now fully written. Not for revenge, not for applause. Just to be seen, not as the obedient sister, the financial fixer, the quiet disappointment, but as Rachel, a woman who had burned quietly, rebuilt slowly, and returned fully. Monica sat across the room, her feet up on the ottoman, phone in hand. "Are you sure?" she asked. I nodded. "No names, no details they can weaponize, but enough truth for someone else to feel less crazy." She leaned forward. "Then let's post it." It went live on a blog she helped curate, one about family, justice, and all the little betrayals that never make the news. No clickbait, just stories like mine. At first, nothing. Then a ping. Then another. Within an hour, the comment section was blooming. People writing, "Same here." My sister did that to me too. I thought I was alone. And the one that made my hands tremble as I clicked open the thread. "Thank you. I thought I was alone in my family's cruelty." The words blurred as tears filled my eyes. Not sadness, not even release. Just the soft understanding that what I'd survived meant something to someone else. That was enough. A buzz on my phone pulled me back. A photo from Robin's, the entrance to my new office space. A clean glass door with black lettering etched neatly. Rachel Wilson, consulting principal. No shared accounts. No borrowed titles. Just mine. I stared at it for a long time, then minimized the photo and reopened the post. I scrolled to the very bottom, past the stories, the confessions, the anonymous messages of solidarity. Then, with steady fingers, I added one final line. My name is Rachel Wilson, and I am no one's failure. There's a strange kind of power in knowing you don't need to raise your voice to be heard. Rachel's journey was never about theatrics. It was about reclaiming what was stolen in silence. Dignity, voice, and the right to exist outside someone else's shadow. Too often, injustice doesn't look like crime scenes or screaming matches. It hides behind birthday toasts, family dinners, polite smiles, and inheritance signatures signed in the dark. That's why stories like this matter. Because they remind us that cruelty wears familiar faces and betrayal can be dressed in pearls. But more than that, they remind us that justice doesn't require fury. It requires patience, proof, and the terrifying strength to walk away, not just physically, but emotionally, financially, and generationally. Rachel didn't destroy her family. They did that themselves with every lie they signed her name to. She simply stopped funding the fiction. And in doing so, she wrote something much greater. A truth too solid to erase. That's the quiet miracle of standing up. Not in courtrooms, but in choices, in boundaries, in refusing to pick up the phone just because it rings. So, if you've ever been the invisible one, the peacemaker, the scapegoat, or the silent sponsor of other people's egos, remember this. You're not alone. You never were. And maybe, like Rachel, all it takes is one brave no to begin your own story again. Maybe standing up today means you'll never again have to bow to injustice tomorrow. If this story echoed even a little of your own experience, we invite you to join the conversation. Like, share, and subscribe to support real narratives about justice, truth, and healing. Comment 1 if Rachel's journey felt like yours, or 2 if you're still wrestling with what justice should look like. Let's open that dialogue together.